Welcome to the Postgame. I'm Michael Brooks, along with super producer Matt Leck. Yo.
Keep it simple.
Christ. Chief economist David Griscom.
How's it going?
Super producer David Slavic. Intern James. YouTube Maestro Forrest. Advisor Artesia. I'm giving like Advisor Ben. Full range of shout outs. Advisor Mark. Welcome to the Postgame, everybody. As Richard Wolff would say, it's do or die. It's do or die, you little prick. You know, I realize how much I like Lula. I forget what the context was, but Griscom and I were talking about something, and because maybe we can actually chat about. I think it's sort of, well, no, it's really actually, honestly, it's not a dead topic because it hasn't been voted on. So we'll end up chatting a bit about the DSA thing. But I was making the point in the context of talking about DSA endorsing Cynthia Nixon, which maybe we'll get to in a bit, that like I am not Cynthia Nixon is not like I'm sure I actually get this. I'm sure she's a perfectly nice person, and I think she has some very nice values. But this is not, there's a handful of politicians, Bernie, Corbyn, Lula, there's not really that many that I'm like, okay, Mujica, obviously, Mandela. And then you said something like some bullshit that David Harvey said about Lula. And I just was like, fuck David Harvey. And I was like, wow, that says a lot. I was like, I really like Lula. like David Harvey was like eating like a crumpet in his Manhattan office while Lula was lifting 40 million people out of poverty.
David Harvey's, teaching capital to people in prison.
Oh, yeah, so important. So totally more important than literally rebuilding the Brazilian economy and eliminating hunger as a category. Totally. This actually is a good.
What's incredible about your love for Lula is that
we should do We should do games where we pit two people against each other who A, are both good and deserve admiration, B, are in completely different lanes, and C, we have absolutely no way of actually literally comparing them. That would be really fun. Lula versus David Harvey.
What's so good about your like immediate reaction against David Harvey is his criticism of Lula was so light. It wasn't even like Lula's a bad guy or sellout. It was just like David Harvey said that one of Lula's comments about Lula basically said that the American recession was caused by like American culture and like how that was wrong. And Michael's like, fuck David Harvey.
What's awesome too is like I actually totally always come down on the side of like the Marxists on those kind of arguments. Like I'm always like, nope, don't do some silly cultural argument. It's pure economics. Shut the fuck up.
It's because they don't want it enough. You're totally right.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, I think, it is just like, hey, if Lula said that blue eyes lead to recessions, that's what it is. Which is not what he said. I don't remember. He said something like, but you know what actually though, where if I'm remembering the Lula quote correctly, which is actually why I probably am a little bit eye-rollish about Harvey, is that it wasn't like a it was much more of like a campaign red meat. Like he literally said something like to the effect of like, it was like a joke, like white people cause recessions. Like it wasn't an actual like, I am going to do an address to the São Paulo Economic Society and try to make some like essentialist argument. Like I think it was literally just like the good thing we are not white. Amy, if you are tired of weak white men trying to make love to you, I will host you in São Paulo. Give you a real love making. Baby. Raise baby like Lion King. Oh. David Harvey? Who the fuck is David Harvey? I mean, the rules have to change when somebody's a political prisoner to some extent. They have to.
I guess. I mean, yeah.
I mean, look. Let me give you. Actually, this is more. This in some ways is more. Rafael Correa, as president of Ecuador, was both a lot more radical than Lula and on the other hand, indulged in some politics that were objectively more problematic than Lula, right? Including like, and a lot of people misunderstood like the point that I was making about Elizabeth Brunig. I'm not going to relitigate that, but in terms of actual policy, like I am not cool with making abortion illegal. Correa supported that, if I recall correctly, and he certainly did not support civil rights for gay and lesbian people, which Lula and Dilma did. And there was a number, and he also went against, he was very left populist, but he went aggressively against indigenous people with regards to things like pipeline development. There's real problems. And also, on the other hand, significant accomplishments and much more adversarial to the United States and much more trying to kind of closer to the Morales sort of end. But his predecessor is trying to put him in jail now, too. Mm-hmm. His predecessor put an Interpol notice on him on a profoundly flimsy story that, based on the testimony of a low-level police lieutenant, that somehow he personally talked to Correa and was involved in a kidnapping in 2012 with a political opponent. Like, it may at least the evidence as available now makes no sense. And the story is that his vice president, Lenin Moreno, got into office and moved significantly to the right. And so they had a political falling out. And now there is a politicization of the legal process against Correa. So even Correa, who I have genuinely more ambivalent feelings about, both in ways that are in some ways better than Lula and in a lot of ways worse, again, it's like, yeah, but the main issue now is they're trying to imprison him for a left political stance. So I think that's the other part of the dynamic with Lula. It's like, this isn't the time.
Without a doubt. It's also like, Brazil's also an important site of struggle. It's sort of interesting that, like Brazil's like out of the BRIC countries, like the rising economies. I mean, this is the only one that has any kind of like, real viable left position. So it's definitely something that we don't just want to sacrifice for kind of like random issues. And it's also something that's like very worrying to think about that being lost. As it,
well, it already is.
Like it's going on right now.
I just saw a report the other day that hunger is again becoming an issue in Brazil.
Yeah,
it was not an issue. He eliminated that. Now, is there a lot more to do? And is that insane that is even considered an accomplishment in a world that we live in, that should just not exist? Of course. But the reality was it did exist for a lot of people, and he made that not so.
Yeah.
And, that just can't be minimized. In addition to the fact I like the guy. Because frankly, I mean, what's not to like? I wish there was more of an American, a U.S. leftism that was far more like Lula. Yeah. Yes. Of the trade unions, of the street, with a deep charisma, a real social base, yes.
It would be nice.
That's profoundly missing here.
Well, we do have Willie Nelson, but...
If Willie Nelson was like a lot more hardy and wasn't high all the time, he probably would be like Lula, and we all love Willie Nelson. So that kind of proves my point. And do you want to be the one who, like, when Willie Nelson's name comes up, you're like, yeah, but he did Gap ads. So.
Oh God!
No.
You
want to be that guy?
I have a Michael reaction whenever anyone says anything bad about Willie Nelson. I'm very serious about that too.
Okay, well, if you can get your panties in a bunch about Willie Nelson, you can at least spare some for a political prisoner who lifted 40 million people out of poverty, you little prick. To quote Richard Wolff, speaking about you. All right, let's take a call. You are calling from a 266 area code, and I believe you are calling from Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is Caroline from Montreal.
Hi, Caroline. How are you? You had called last week, and we didn't have enough time to really sort of go over your point last week. So so go ahead. Remind everybody what you were talking about, and we'll attempt to respond to it.
Yeah, so I was basically calling about, obviously, once in a while, you and other people and me, we kind of see this kind of bad tactics, especially on college campuses, and actually specifically on college campuses, like bad bad tactics for the most part, and bad strategy. But I feel like there's a real potential there that has to be exploited, or there's a lost opportunity if we don't turn this into something revolutionary, and that comes basically, from the fact that there's real suffering that comes from capitalism in these experiences, and people kind of transfer them where they can. And I feel like this, the very identity-based activism you see is because that's what's institutionalized in the universities.
Right. I agree with
But
that.
truth is, like the crazy rates of mental illnesses, for instance, like that's a big red flag of capitalist exploitation. It doesn't happen by itself.
Right.
And that comes from the fact that university is not optimized for learning, but for, churning trained workers, making them available to capital and to the state. Like, if we have to understand, like, what we have to do in that space is not just kind of treat universities as a microcosm that, you change something that reflects what necessarily exactly the change you want in society, but understand that these institutions are integrated strongly with work. And actually that most of what students are doing is either directly work as interns, as grad students, as employees of the university, as employees of other companies outside the university that they have to work for to sustain themselves, or is training for work. Because you can learn outside the universities. You can only get diplomas and recognition that leads to jobs, that leads to employment, that leads to economic outcomes. That's the point of it now.
So
And that's
I hear what
like my main point would be like, if workers are revolutionary because of their positions, students are in many ways also part of that revolutionary potential.
What's tricky about a lot of your points I agree with. Some maybe I have some question about, but my critique, though, I feel like so first of all, it's like nothing that I say and nothing that anybody says. I honestly, not just on this show, like I don't know of anybody on the left who makes a critique of some types of kind of trends in campus politics or whatever, who isn't doing it with the intention and the desire to support everybody organizing more effectively. So my and I will say specifically, like I'm almost trying to retire. I'll say specifically with identity politics, I'm almost like going to try to retire that term in my usage, because honestly, it means so many different things, so many different people, and it runs the gamut from positions that I actually completely subscribe to and I think are indispensable, to positions that I disagree with but I think are very intellectually defensible, to things that I think are total trash, right? And it all sort of exists under this umbrella, but we're talking about multiple things. And I think that so even when you talk about like college, so specifically, the exploitation of grad students as an example is obviously and clearly and very directly a labor exploitation issue. Then there's a whole set of conversations about cutting resources for public colleges, people going into debt, how education is being re-engineered, and attacks on the humanities and social sciences to turn things into like really professional training grounds. Like all of this stuff is really, really important and foundational. And then there is also, and again, what is hard is like I don't reject either in campus or off campus people organizing or focusing on issues that are, connected to or even in times exclusively focused on what people call quote unquote identity issues. That's not my objection. But there is a certain there's a performative critique that I have. There's a notion that I even remember, even in like 2007, in my college experience, that people looked at cultural signifiers as meaning more than real material gains and advancement. There was definitely a real purity politics, which went way over the line of preserving integrity in communities and went to just social manners and controlling in a way that would be totally repulsive to anybody outside of the group. And those things that I critique, I critique them because I think that campuses are an important site, and unfortunately, there's some really negative tendencies there that I think undermine our kind of politics. And I don't exactly know how to describe them, because some of those things happen under this kind of rubric of quote unquote identity politics, but I'm not really necessarily talking about identity politics. David, go ahead. I know you have something to add.
Well, I mean, I would just want to say, in support of the college, like, we look at a lot of the student movements that have occurred, especially in France in '68, and one of the key linkages of their success was the kind of work to merge the student movement, which can be very radical and powerful, with actual working class demands, and that was actually a very interesting strategy, which unfortunately, and I know I'm not particularly an expert on the Canadian situation, but I know that that's definitely missing in the United States.
Well, I can say, yeah.
Well,
I can say in Quebec, we really have a culture that's oriented, and I would say there's even a difference between Francophone and Anglophone Quebec, because I've had experiences in kind of both worlds. And I would say, at my Francophone university I went to, we, obviously I was in humanities, but we would have, a day strike every semester or so. Every other semester, there would be at least a day, and then every couple of years, there's a significant strike. And we had one in, I remember we had the big strike in 2008. That worked. We won on that. We kind of won in 2012. Another, big strike that was reported pretty wildly. We had a complete failure in tactics in 2015, which was kind of not strategic in some ways. But, I think, what is there that I feel is important is understanding that, a symbolic day of strike is not going to achieve too much other than rehearsing that thing as part of what you do. But the 2012 strike truly disrupted the economy in many ways. It disrupted the education system, beyond the universities, because primary, secondary education depends. I don't know how it is in the U.S., but here, there's crazy turnover for teachers. So they really depend on having constantly new trained teachers that are also going to leave the profession within years, because the working conditions are terrible. But I think one idea in my dreams I would is when there's these big teacher strikes, shouldn't students who are going to be teachers also take part of that? I think they should. I think if you delay significantly, graduation, it's a toll on the people, but it also tells it disrupts actively. It means there's no replacements for the, openings that are inevitably being created by that.
I think that point about the strike is definitely interesting, and that's why the students actually have this the actual radical position where it's they are really pushed down by the system right now, and especially a lot of their labor is exploited. but they don't have as much to lose as like line workers or people who are making like $10 to $12 an hour. They can delay like graduation, something like that, and make those powerful moves. I think that I think that there's
they can delay at the cost of more debt.
Yeah.
And more
Well,
service
that is,
fees,
I mean,
so.
right, but
But I think that the tension is like in the U.S. at least at a lot of universities is that there isn't a very strong kind of political consensus, unfortunately, in a lot of movements. But there are a lot of movements that are going on in the U.S., which unfortunately are much more about kind of, I don't know, negotiating narratives rather than trying to create like a strong politics. And I think that, because maybe I'm missing the tension here, but like, I think that the kind of things that you're talking about and increasing kind of militant, labor activism with students is 100%, what students should be doing.
And every criticism I ever make is never around the range of things you're talking about. The only thing that I might is, and David, elaborate in a second, is one, I think that there are some things that occur under this quote unquote campus rubric, which are just, they end up being things that are very limited and self-referential to their context. And sometimes those are really important, and those are really important interventions. Other times I disagree with them, but I also think the most important problem from a mass organizing perspective is like, are you creating group cultures and group identities that are off-putting to enough people that it isn't going to facilitate the types of mass actions and solidarity you're talking about? And that's a real problem. And that's what I get concerned about. Not the idea of students viewing themselves as workers or students being aggressive and militant, by the way, on any of their demands. But I even think like aggressive and militant on their demands could mean, I don't know if that necessarily just means like it could mean petitioning the administration. It could also mean demanding a different administration, putting more things on the table.
I think like there's specific policies that I don't know how they work in the U.S., but here like stuff like full-time requirements to get any rights. Like this is just like enforced hell on a lot of people. Like and just and that's not like that's a like students should have a 40-hour work week thing, because if they have full-time requirements, it's either they have their parents funding them or something like that, or they're having to work 10 hours a day every day. Studying,
well, we completely, I guess the stuff you're talking about, I agree with you completely.
Yeah, that's a workers' rights issue.
I agree.
Like a lot
100%.
of these things that make people's lives better, like I think students should be fighting for these. I don't think like treating the microcosm activism like should be replaced by fighting for things that make people's lives
I agree
endurable.
with you 100%. Thank you so much for the call.
And not the fucking idiot the campus Republicans decided to bring to school.
Yeah, the fucking idiot that the campus, look, that's exactly it. And I'll even make a distinction. Look, Milo was doxing people and putting people's well-being, in jeopardy. So that needs to be dealt with. Besides that, you either ignore the fucking idiot or you go and turn the fucking idiot into a joke. And that's it. And it's not central. And it is not the main thing, period. And even just the public perception and brand that the left was like, afraid of some little twerp like Ben Shapiro is a disaster for us representationally.
Yeah, but I do like preventing them from getting.
Thanks so much
from getting those people. I do like preventing those people from getting nice paychecks from universities.
Oh yeah, and I also like the idea.
But a lot of the people that pay, a lot of those checks don't come from the universities.
No, I
come
understand
through,
that.
The Mercers funding college Republicans or whatever plutocrat it is. Because I've actually had these conversations like. I've done a little bit of campus stuff, and I've wanted to do more, and it has really been essentially look straight up.
I used to be in Students for Justice in Palestine. We weren't getting any money from the university for that. We had to raise it ourselves.
I've heard that. They were like, Michael, if you were conservative, you would have a speech booked every weekend. Matt, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, sorry, I just lost my train of thought when I was listening to you guys talk. Sorry, I was thinking about Megan McArdle. Anyway,
we'll get to that actually. But first, let me just. Do you have that music ready for me, Matt? Do you have a happy birthday instrumental for me? This is an important happy birthday announcement. Monique, who is an incredibly important part of the show, who I see setting people straight in the Discord, occasionally setting me straight on the calls. At times, she's going to get a pushback. But we love Monique.
That looks like a non-royalty version. Let me find one.
Whatever, don't worry about it. I'll just look. Monique is somebody who, obviously supports the show as a patron, has great insights, and does incredibly important work as a nurse. And I just wanted to say it's her birthday today, so happy birthday, Monique. I hope that you're enjoying yourself. I hope you're not watching or listening at the moment. I hope you're out with friends, partying, and having fun and taking some very, very well-deserved rest and relaxation, because you, like so many other people involved in this show, in terms of being, viewers and so on, have a really for real job. And I appreciate you. So happy birthday, Monique. Happy birthday, Monica. All right, Matt.
The one thing I was going to say that I forgot was, and I do think...
Smooth transition, Matt.
Maybe
you guys should just offer your happy birthdays as well, and then we can get back to
happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Okay, great. Matt, go ahead.
I'm
trying to teach them a little bit of fucking civilization here, guys. It's like fucking wolves. Okay,
well,
Matt,
I got some
go ahead.
civilization for them. I do think that the general gist of that call is entirely on the money, and that college activism should be, aimed towards real things and not who's behind the speaker's podium. But I will say that I do like to hear that, Milo needs to ask for more security, and Crowder is super afraid, because that is coming out of their check, right?
Exactly. And that's strategic, and that is a totally different frame, because that isn't like the story. Then isn't like, oh, we're afraid of listening to some two-bit plutocrat bigot speak. The story is these two-bit hacks funded by plutocrats are scared to speak and are losing money because of it. That's, to quote a great broadcaster, awesome. Matt, what's the Meghan McArdle drama? Take us into your world.
Oh, okay. I thought we.
Matt's super excited about this, and then we will play the Trump tweet game.
I can't believe this person's around.
That
honestly.
Meghan McArdle exists.
It's
That
just
she's actually like a sentient thing.
It's too. But at the Washington Post, it's just too much.
Actually, should we play this clip of the New York Daily News layoffs first, because that kind of leads into what McArdle's going off about.
Yes. So this is actually a very good clip. The New York Daily News, I believe, laid off half of its newsroom. Is that correct? Is that maybe more? And it's basically they have been acquired. There's a conglomerate called Trunk, I believe it's called. Trunk. Literally called Trunk.
They sound like the good guys, right?
Yeah, they sound great. They sound like a dumb version of FANG, which was that delightful acronym you introduced to Steve.
Is what over? It's over.
So, and look, newspapers still really matter. Just as Sinclair's turning a string of local cable stations into pure right-wing propaganda really matter in terms of voter attitudes, in terms of the demographics of people who read and watch these things. And basically, this is just a really solid and indignant clip of Michael Kay, who's a sports guy I don't know what, he's on ESPN now?
This is Yes, which I'm not sure what it stands for. It's not the Yankees Entertainment.
Yeah, but he's also got, I guess he's on ESPN Radio.
Oh, yeah, that
Yes
must be
TV.
ESPN Radio, yeah.
Okay, Michael Kay is going to break down what happened with the New York Daily News outlets layoffs, and he's exactly right.
You know how many people are left in the sports section of the New York Daily News? 9 after the firings today. 9 people. When I was at the New York Daily News, do you realize that there were some Yankee games that there would be 9 people covering that game? Wow. Now they're not going to have a writer covering the New York Yankees. So a big company like Trunk, and I was reading a lot of stories today where they have advisors that are getting paid $5 million a year, are firing people making $70,000.
Yep.
And doing hard work to cover teams. They don't even deserve to own the New York Daily News. And if Peter teaches me today, and he will, I am canceling my subscription online. Who would ever buy this paper? Who would ever read this paper? And I know, everybody, I'm not dumb. I watch everything. I read everything. The big bad media has come under a real negative cloud over these last 2 years. And part of that is because of the partisan politics that are going on. And if you write something negative about the president says it's fake news, which completely cast a pall over all journalists. Don't believe it. People work hard. And if you don't have newspapers, you cannot keep government in check. And if you think this is a happy day, then you don't know what you're talking about. You're uneducated. The history of this country has been founded on the strength of a free press. And a monolith company like Trunk decides that they're going to just completely strafe the New York Daily News staff? And New York's going to stand by and buy the paper? Why would you buy the paper? We're going to get wire service accounts.
He's exactly right. Look, it wasn't appropriate, frankly, for that, polemic, but obviously we can address the many own goals and failings of mainstream news outlets, which have already been compromised through corporate concentrations, corporate monopolies, their own just sort of like internal failings and limits in intellectual class and geographic culture that they hire and represent and promote. That's all true. But the other reality that he's articulating so well here is first of all, it's 100% right that these conglomerates are a threat to democracy and free expression in every way, shape, and form. And he also put his finger on the great synthesis between demagogic clown fascism of Donald Trump and the priorities of vulture capitalism. Because if Trump's Twitter account and his mind meld with his authoritarian base help feed the momentum for justifying gutting these news outlets for short-term bang-ups for holding companies, awesome. We have a synergy of interest. And that, again, reinforces that in this predator capitalism, there is no fundamental contradiction. You might talk to, I don't know anything about Trunk. You might talk to some Trunk higher up who might be totally willing, maybe even on record, to say, oh, Donald Trump, so uncouth. You're not supposed to say things like that about women or Muslims or Mexicans in public. Maybe they'll even do one better and say, oh, I disagree with kidnapping and terrorizing children. Okay, that's all posturing and branding. Their whole strategy for gutting newsrooms, destroying lives, diluting democracy, destroying the press is aided and abetted every day by this motherfucker saying fake news. And this lying, disgusting, corrupt scum saying fake news every day was facilitated and opened, unfortunately, by a media class that completely was asleep at the wheel and perpetuating all sorts of problems and inequalities in our society. And this also leads to an addition of Matt Leck harasses Meghan McArdle on Twitter.
She really is just completely odious as a human individual.
Yes.
So basically she just decided, in her way, she's getting self-aware about this now, which makes it even more infuriating for a person like me. But all right, guys, it's the Daily News tweet storm you've all been waiting for.
Oh,
you can all exhale now, blah, blah, blah. Basically,
she's so disgusting. This is Meghan McArdle with her jujitsu nerdism.
She wasn't lying when she said it was a storm. My God.
I've only read about half
all right,
of these.
so we know that obviously she's going to try to justify and intellectualify this obscene predator capitalism which destroyed the New York Daily News. Go ahead.
This is where I came in at. Somehow in the 20th century, newspapers figured out how to scam department stores into paying them to tell you Tell the local citizenry which city councilors were corrupt. It was a magnificent think for us. I mean, she's an idiot, so she has a typo. It was a magnificent thing for us and for America, but it is ending. In the words of economist Herbert Stein, have you heard of him, Griscom? Yeah, who gives a fuck?
I've heard of him. Maybe you ought to do your research.
If something can't go on forever, it will. It will stop. Well, journalists can't go on finding out stuff you need to know unless someone's willing to pay for it. Advertisers and readers no longer are. And what infuriates me so much about this is like the basic thing about fucking newspaper history in this country is that we subsidize it through like free postage and things like that. But she instead starts it as this weird little thing where all of a sudden department stores thought that it was valuable for them to have news in their department stores. Like they start history at where it becomes convenient for them to start it.
Always, without fail. And you responded. Did you?
I said, tell it to to her, what says if something can't go on forever, it will stop. I said, tell it to capitalism, you idiot ghoul. Also try combining search terms, newspapers, and postage. I went on to say, people like asymmetric info should be treated. This is Megan McArdle.
Yes.
That's her annoying Twitter handle.
She's such a fucking idiot.
Should be treated with hostility and disrespect. I mean this.
Yep.
She exists to excuse the brutality of capitalism and serves no other purpose. They love the hollowing out of the media despite costless protests of solidarity because they know as courtiers they will be good.
That's exactly right. And that's her entire pseudo-intellectual sociopath project. And also just that sort of morphine drip into the brain. Because what's so interesting is like, I think that there are fewer and fewer people that could even buy into this fantasy. And almost what it does is it's like, I don't know the right word for this take, but sometimes I'll hear somebody who is not, say they're actually basically pretty good. They have decent politics. And I mean actually decent politics, like better than they just don't like Trump. Like they get that we need to have Medicare for all. They understand that oligarchy is a problem. But they'll occasionally come out of nowhere with like a take like this that's provided by some, I like that, by some ghoul like Megan McArdle. And you realize that it's the emotional need to not fully confront reality. And
Absolutely.
She's a professional reality distorter on behalf of the worst people on earth.
She's a professional bedtime storyteller to people who want to believe in capitalism.
Precisely.
Does she really even have like a base? I don't know. It's like who are these Megan McArdle readers?
But that's another good example, right? Like she doesn't, but she writes for the Washington Post.
Yeah. I just don't.
Because that's the other thing is that there's always an opportunity. It's not even exactly failing up, right? If we're being honest, but there's a way to just sort of like mediocre and thrive. Mm-hmm. Right? Like Elizabeth Brunig is a damn good writer who brings something different to the table. Agree or disagree? She is a serious talent who has a real understanding of America. And she gets to, for a variety of reasons, a lot of which the success of Bernie Sanders, frankly, and her own talent, she gets to get that spot. But if you're like, I write dumb, quote unquote, like I still do like late 90s counterintuitive blogs, which always end up justifying hierarchy, abuse, inequality, racism, sexism, you name it. Every couple of years, I write some like Malcolm Gladwell knockoff book. You're good. If that's the lane you choose, very little talent or intellect is required.
You might need to make some tough choices.
Maybe you should think about it. Because you ain't getting my spot.
When I was at university, I saw Bhaskar debate Megan McArdle. And it was actually one of like the worst evenings of my life. I left
because you were in the same room with Megan McArdle.
I was very excited because this was when Jackman was just sort of starting, and sort of before all this kind of acknowledgement for like the socialist left. So I was very excited for having them just walked in this room, and Megan McArdle was like, "You're better off than the King of England in the 1500s."
Oh my God!
Why? Because he really liked strawberries, but it was really hard for him to get strawberries. So did you know that you're better off than the King of England?
I love that shit. Did you know the King of England never rode a bicycle?
Did you know that even the poorest people in the United States live better than pharaohs? By the way, there's a really, 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 really easy way to counteract that particular line of argumentation, which is, okay, and we can do better. Like, that literally requires two, like, if your whole foundation rests on just as like, yeah, great, awesome. Life is generally improved than it was 3,000 years ago. Nice. Or like libertarians, like their case studies of like the liberalizing effects of capitalism and liberal democracy fused together is like always against like Prussia. It's like, right. Well, first of all, even within our world, we know that there are full social democracies that are far more democratized than what you're advocating for. And secondly, like, why don't we apply the same metric that you idiots always apply to, like, I don't know, phones or other gadgets? And I'll say, I'm in the ever improvement business. I think we can innovate and improve delivering for people and democratizing society. You keep innovation at different ways that you can download porn.
Yeah. I
apply innovation to improving the general welfare of society. But that's just me. You know, I'm a socialist, so what the fuck do I know? You're calling from a 773 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
This be Uchiwali, man.
Uchiwali! It's great to hear from you. How are you doing?
Okay. I was just listening to your conversation about black economics and banking.
Right.
And you covered a lot of good stuff. But just it reminded me of something. You know, there's the trifecta of conservative arguments about black people. And they basically all of them sum up to the same thing, is that, like you said, black people are stupid and lazy, right?
Right.
So one of them you covered before is, you know, they always say black women are out there breeding like bunnies, having children everywhere, and don't even know who the father's in.
Right.
You talked about the second one tonight, which is, you know, black people are just don't, you know, they're so lazy. Their economic status is their own fault, and you guys did a good job talking about that. But I think there's one more leg to the stool.
Okay.
There was this guy named a Nigerian sociologist, anthropologist named John Agbu. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
No.
He came to the United States and did some research, and he started this whole thing that black people black children or teenagers will make fun of each other for, you know, reading books and doing well in school by telling them that they're acting white. So that's why black kids underperform in schools, because they get mercilessly teased by their cohorts. Yeah, so
I haven't heard of him, but I've heard that talking point, right? Yes, that there's this. So schools that are filled with, say, like, you know, textbooks that are 20 years out of date, maybe even have like asbestos. Literally, their kids are coming from food insecure homes, and by the way,
lead paint everywhere.
And by the way, these same conditions actually could apply to like an all-white, Appalachian school. I will use that image, and some of the same conditions could be playing out. But the real answer is that what happens is a kid goes to school, hasn't had breakfast, is dealing with out-of-date textbooks, overcrowded classrooms, asbestos, lead, and all sorts of lack of resources. And then they're like, well, whatever, my stomach hurts, I'm dizzy and unfocused with out-of-date material, but I'm totally primed to fucking ace this and go to Yale, but someone will say I'm acting white, so I'm going to not do that. And that's the problem. Right. Sure.
And, you know, what's funny is I went to an all-white school. I mentioned this before.
Well, you do act very white, so that's interesting.
That is true. I went to an all-white school. I was the only black person in the whole graduating class. The school was so white that my older brother, the school had been open 40 years, and my older brother was the first person, the black person, to graduate from it. And so I think I'm qualified to talk about white people in their natural environment when they go to school.
I think you are, yes.
And
Yeah, you're an
and
anthropologist.
I saw an assload of white kids, including me. You know, the one black kid get made fun of for being smart.
Right.
So where's this cataclysm in the white society? Because anybody can be accused of being a nerd, especially if you get into the books too much. So I'm just
well,
not
it's just
feeling
all of
it.
these
And,
things. All of these things are insulated. Like exactly. And I remember I had this. Well, this is the post game, so I can sort of tell this story, though maybe I shouldn't. I remember an ex girlfriend of mine. Extremely wealthy family on Long Island, and not her. She
was she white?
She was Jewish. Total. This was the
okay.
Jap phase, and
Okay, got it.
And the Jap phase. We better not unlock this. So no, actually, in all honesty, like she was delightful. It's great. Whatever. I wish her all the very best. But the reason for this story it's not about her. Her dad had remarried, and his new wife had her own set of kids from her previous marriage, just as he had 2 kids, right? So it was kind of like a little. I mean, they didn't all live together, but say for sake of this conversation, Long Island Brady Bunch. And it was the summer, and we were spending a lot of time in Long Island and hanging out and so on. And there was this kid, the woman's youngest son. He was probably 16, 17 years old. Anyways, I'm not going to get into details, but he was actually a very nice kid and not a bad kid, and kind of, he was fairly smart. He got into a lot of trouble. And my thing was like, he was totally fine and went on to a good college. And to me, like the lesson was so like the lesson, and it wasn't like, and by the way, it wasn't like he was really truly awful and underperformed in school or did anything really bad. He actually probably did fine in school and did stuff that's like whatever, it really isn't that big of a deal. But he was totally insulated and totally fine. And the lesson was like, the test of all these metrics is like, what happens to the B kid, basically? Because I knew kids, by the way, race will add a whole other dimension to it. But I knew lower middle class white kids who had some of the same thing happen to them. And they ended up working at 7-Eleven because they got something on their permanent record and they weren't going to get financial aid. And, but it's just like so that whole thing of like, if you're rich, you're insulated from all that stuff. If you're privileged, you're insulated from all that stuff. And it even goes into the other stuff. I read research, I forget who did this, but it was really interesting about how like misperceptions about what college was about. And like there's some kids who were sort of like strivers and had worked their way into good schools. It was almost like they put too much attention into their grades. And kids who were kind of like legacies recognized that they were there to build a social network to get a job. And the grades were, you needed good enough grades so people didn't think you were an idiot, but that wasn't really the point. That wasn't going to get you a certain type of internship necessarily. So, yeah.
That's the Al Gores of the world right there.
Exactly. Right. Precisely. No, really. I mean, and at least in his case, he was pretty intellectually curious, but that's exactly right. So it's like first it's used to demonize and distract from real problems in the case of how it's deployed racially. And then on the other hand, it's like, it doesn't matter. Like even to the extent that's true, say 2% of the problem is some kids are discouraged from excelling academically because they don't want to be bullied for being nerds. Well, if you're a wealthy white kid in a prep school, that matters how? Not at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then, the thing's a zombie. Anytime you say something on the right that's bad about black folks, it never goes away. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. It's like their belief that, cutting taxes boosts the economy.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how many times you prove it wrong. They still believe it. And I don't think there's any way to get rid of the stupidity from society, at least among conservatives.
Well, I think that's the play. And that's why I'm concerned about this dark web stuff, because it's very reactionary, it's very conservative, but it's branded as centrist and forward-looking, and that's why it needs to be attacked and undermined.
I worry about it, but I worry about it in the context of Trump more. I see your point, but
Yeah.
I worry about it with Trump because the problem with it is that I have lots of people that I went to high school with as friends on Facebook, and I get into political arguments with them, and they have this bubble going on where anytime you point to any fact they don't want to believe, it's liberal bias, therefore they get to ignore it. And the problem with that is in the real world, if you really thought liberal bias was a problem, what you do is you'd say, okay, I read your article. It says this. I think this is actually the truth. I think they got it wrong because of their liberal bias. Therefore, I'm going to ignore that particular point. But they don't do that. It's just a filter to not believe anything you don't want.
Right.
So
Exactly.
they see the article, they see the headline, Trump screwed something up. I get to ignore it because of liberal bias. And you're going to see that when people are out on the streets protesting because Mueller actually proved that Trump was colluding with the Russians. And the whole hardcore Trump base is not going to believe, no matter how good the evidence is, that Trump did anything wrong. So it's just going to be ignored. And therefore, you're just committing a coup for wanting to impeach Trump.
Right. No, that's true. We already know that. So it's a question of...
Yeah.
Yeah. You're totally right. I appreciate the call. Come visit us soon in studio, man.
I'm still here in Chicago. I'm planning on like early next month being in New York for a good. So.
All right, great. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
All right,
Peace.
bye-bye. Peace. All right, let's do some questions from the Discord. Hello, Michael. A little hyperbolic this week with my question and maybe some tinfoil hat. What are the odds Trump starts or attempts to start a war with Iran via Twitter? And second, with Trump now claiming Russia is going to meddle on behalf of Republicans, is it just another reason to use against Kavanaugh and SCOTUS? Trump, as we already talked about, not accepting election results. Now this could be a vote. I would say definitely. This is exactly the type of thing to use against Kavanaugh, no doubt. And he already is. He already is instigating against Iran on Twitter. So I don't want to, go out ahead of that, but it's already incredibly dangerous. And as I say, I'll reiterate. People need to spend way more time thinking about that dynamic than they are, I would suggest. Question from Tabby Cat. Where did that go? Question from Tabby Cat, and this is for everybody. Any ideas on how y'all's fake Mossad crew would hoodwink Republicans? That's a really good question. David, how would we Sacha Baron Cohen Republicans?
I mean, I don't think you have to really hoodwink them too well, right? You just get them in a room.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would email them and say, I'm from Mossad and want to give you an award. And then I would make sure that my film crew is set up. That's how I would hoodwink Republicans. Henrik, hey, Michael, where do you buy your shirts? They're looking very slick and dapper looking. Well, that is a professional tool of the trade, my friend. Hit me up on Discord. There's a website I use whose name I'm forgetting. That's the honest truth. I'll try to remember for next week. But it is literally a French website. Questions from Big Tune. Hi, Michael. Do you have any insights on what these blockchain tech billionaires like Brock Pierce are attempting in Puerto Rico? Seems like another part of neoliberal shock therapy, but I'd like to know more.
We talked with Nomiki about that.
We talked with Nomiki Konst about that. But basically, yeah, terrible. But look up the Nomiki episode. And actually, I believe Nomiki's coming back on August 4th. And we'll do more Puerto Rico follow-up.
My understanding is he's a lunatic, and most people heavily invested in the Bitcoins. That would be my read of them.
Indeed. Although I do think that there is going to need to be more of a left strategy. Like, first is debunking all the bullshit, and then there's going to be actually a left discourse on these type of mechanisms.
Brock Pierce is the guy from Kid President, right?
I have no clue.
He has some weird background like that, yeah.
He's some asshole. The interview with Miss Baradaran is reminding me of a confrontation that I had on a street festival while doing outreach work with my freshly elected member of provincial parliament. While getting signatures to save the just updated sex ed curriculum, a self-professed homosexual male proudly proclaimed with his hand on his heart that he is not, quote-unquote, prissy gay, his definition being someone that never questioned conservative norms and is situationally closeted. What is the importance of people that internalize discrimination and arguments for it in the enforcement of discriminatory power structures, e.g., the model minority which I strive to be when I was a Thatcherite? I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, it's certainly an issue. I mean, I can't really get it. I don't comment on like sort of, certainly not people's psyches of experience I don't share. Functionally, there's always a native informant role in politics. And here's the way where I'm not politically correct. I don't do political correctness. I'm not going to give, as an example, I'll acknowledge Einhurst Ali's personal trauma 100%, and even some of her physical courage. But actually, very much in keeping with those people, I'm not going to give her or Majid or any of these other assholes like any more respect or deference because of their identity than I do any of their dumb associates. Yeah. So as a practical matter, fuck them.
What Ayan says about Breivik is maniacal and the sort of thing that she would criticize if a Muslim said it.
Precisely. It's disgusting. And actually, that's, you know what? That's an area where we can have convergence of opinion on. I don't think your ability to talk and critique is in any way purely defined by your positionality. It's dumb to not note and be real about it, but I don't accept that argument at all. And I also will not accept them trying to do jujitsu those techniques on me when I'm talking about somebody who's in the public eye and advocating toxic things. I don't care what their background is, what their lived experience is. I'm not politically correct. That's where I'm coming from with that. Question for Griscom from Kentucky Fried Comrade. What do you think of the concerns regarding the role ETFs on the potential recession? So I'm in an article from various economists and investors expressing their potential to prime a bubble. Oh, whoa, look who's going to his iPhone to figure out the question.
Yeah,
you little prick.
I'm not too good with acronyms. Do we talk about Bitcoins?
No, EFTs. ETFs, excuse me. I don't know what ETFs.
I'm sorry.
Electric transfer. I don't know what they stand for. I'm sorry. My chief economist is missing in action.
Exchange traded funds. Yeah, who cares?
When you make a run at the king, you best not miss.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of the.
Can we get that as a drop?
I
was just like, I need to stop being an asshole, and then I heard you go, yeah, I don't know. You know what? More people should do that in public life because that's the honest answer to a lot of things for all of us. But yeah, I don't know. No, did you want to take a crack at it? I don't know anything about it. I'm totally flying blind. I don't even know what that's an acronym for.
It's I mean,
we'll get back to you next week.
I mean, the kind of stuff that a lot of people are talking about with like the insecurity of the economy now, basically in the way that like global markets are interacting with each other, and basically like exchanges or funds that are sort of incorporated in a lot of different spheres. It is sort of, an interesting area just because there has been so much development after the recession and the kind of like wild policies that we've seen from, central banks. But I don't really have anything too coherent or strong on this one. I don't know what economists are talking about. I haven't read anything about this yet.
Question from Quinn. Do you prefer cap and trade or a carbon tax? And then Quinn, I'm sorry, I'm going to truncate it. You say you're inclined to support a cap and trade system alongside price controls because setting a cap on emissions is important rather than just pricing it. However, the system doesn't seem to have been very effectively enforced where it's been implemented. I don't know where a carbon tax has been implemented, to be honest with you. I think cap and trade is susceptible to an enormous amount of manipulation. And I actually remember when cap and trade was on the verge of passing potentially when Obama first got into office, Goldman was looking at creating another derivatives market around it. So I have a lot of skepticism about it. I mean, that said, look, this is another very relative and absolute area. Fundamentally, if you want to deal with climate crisis and structural economic environmental issues, you need to deal with capitalism. In a relative sense, Jerry Brown being governor of California is a lot better for the viability of the future of planet Earth than Trump being president. but fundamentally, that's a that's like what Joshua Kahn said on Sunday, to paraphrase him. He's like, that's the real superstructure, is literally the ecological systems upon which we rely. Request from Esha, can you please give a shout out to our historical project? Follow historic_LY on Twitter. That's at historic_LY on Twitter. From Thames Darwin, the whole historical argument for capitalism boils down to this. Now that your kids won't die from diarrhea, don't complain that he has to work as a chimney sweep. That is exactly right. Oh, and yeah, actually, I did know this. ETFs are electronically traded funds, which makes a lot of sense, and frankly, shouldn't even need to be said.
Well, Wikipedia is saying exchange-traded funds, so I don't know who to believe.
I don't know. Wikipedia says one thing. People texting say another. Okay, what is this Trump game? We have a Trump tweet game from Matt Leck. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, Matt Leck, for the Trump tweet game. Is this something that you were orchestrating and we're playing without knowing anything?
Yeah. So
okay,
Trump's been on one as far as Twitter is concerned this evening. So I have 4 tweets. One of those was actually written by Trump. We have to determine which one of those it is.
Okay, sounds great. And were we pitting Griscom and I against one?
Yeah, you and Griscom, and I will read the tweets. So
okay.
Here is
Griscom. Are you more prepared for this than you were
I
for the electronic fund transfer?
I'm a little bit more of a Trump expert than an ETF expert.
So
nice.
Here's tweet 1. Adam Schiff speaks without knowing the facts and is a total clown. Now knows phony Russia story won't save Dems in November.
All right, this seems like a solid contender. We're going to say that this is number 1 is the Adam Schiff tweet. I don't know about you, David. That definitely seems to me like something that Trump certainly could have cooked up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here we are at number 2.
Sorry, I can't read from this angle.
Oh, do you need me to read?
I got it. So sad and unfair that the FCC wouldn't approve the Sinclair broadcast merger with Tribune. This would be a great and much-needed conservative voice for and of the people. Liberal fake news NBC and Comcast gets approved. Much bigger, but not Sinclair. Disgraceful! Exclamation point.
Wow, this is also, I'm going to say, in a very, and you're only saying only one of these is true, Matt. Wow.
It's got the style.
Wow, this is all very much in the voice of Trump.
Next one, Jeff Bezos' days of using the fake news Washington Post to protect
Wait, you fucked it up?
That was...
That's definitely a fake one. Okay. I don't even understand how you... Wait, how did you fuck that
Hold
one
on,
up?
no, I'll pull that one out later.
Okay.
So you guys missed it, so I was able to save it in time.
Okay.
This is what happens when you make the game off the top of 1 second here.
I have a message from Richard Wolf. Better luck next time, kid.
All right, here's another one.
I knew about electronic fund transfers when I was getting a blowjob at a commune and you weren't even born. Whoa. It's going in on you.
Here's the Trump one. Quote, Trump, I'm very concerned that Russia will be fighting very hard to have an impact on the upcoming election. Based on the fact that no president has been tougher on Russia than me, they will be pushing very hard for the Democrats. They definitely don't want Trump! Exclamation point.
Well, that sounds very Trump because that's the kind of Trump jujitsu, right? That's kind of like, doesn't he do those kind of like, you're the puppet? That's a very you're the puppet tweet. Right.
And
okay.
Here's one I already started with. But Jeff Bezos' days of using the fake news Washington Post to protect Amazon's no-tax monopoly will end when we, quote, take over his website and let librarians administer it.
All right. That's not just because you messed it up. That one isn't true because he would never use librarians in a positive manner. But David, do you want to keep that one on the board or no?
Yeah, let's keep it up.
Okay, you're saying that this one... Okay, I'm saying the Bezos fake news one, that's not real because of the librarians. Okay, the Russia one. Wait, what's next? The Sinclair one or the Russia one? Okay.
Oh, so are we doing like single elimination?
Well, which one is the real Trump?
The only one is real. So at one point we got to make a guess here. All right, David, let's you go first. Go work your way through this. What's your thought process, and what are you going to pick?
Yeah. I feel like I don't trust the Adam Schiff one as a Trump tweet.
That's interesting. I wonder what.
Okay, so let's. I'm just gonna make new rules for this game.
Yeah.
If you guys can each eliminate one, and then we say so.
I eliminate the Bezos one.
Okay.
I don't believe that. I think that's not him. So I eliminate Bezos.
Okay. And I'm going against the Schiff one.
That's very ballsy because I feel like Schiff in Russia is already. I mean, I guess Bezos is territory for him too.
Well, I'm not thinking about any of the other ones. I'm just thinking about the Schiff one. I just don't see Trump, really losing too much sleep over Schiff. I feel like
he's too much of a
Trump's a headline guy. Schiff is hanging around more in the back pages of the WAPO, not really front page news.
I had to dig to page 6.
You're both correct so far.
All right. Whoa. All right. Sounds about right. Okay. All right. This is interesting. Okay. I'm going to all right. Here's what I'll say. I'm going to go I'm very concerned that Russia will be fighting hard to have an impact. I think that's the real quote. And the reason I think it's the real tweet is because I see in the same way with Hillary in the debate when he went, she's the puppet. I think this is exactly the same thought process, and the way he's going from, no, he said he didn't interfere in the elections. Would you like a blowjob a week ago? To now, like, no one's tougher than me. By the way, credit where credit's due to Corey Robin. In some ways, this is actually terrifyingly true, and we should be a little bit more concerned about some of the Russia policies. But I'm going to go with this is a Trump, you're it. And this is the real tweet. Okay. I'm very concerned Russia will be fighting hard to have impact on the upcoming election.
David, would you like to argue for the other one?
Yeah. Let's say that Trump is always playing lots of games, right? And Trump's always trying to, do that one flip.
Trump's always playing lots of games.
That one flip move.
Yes.
I get it. I understand your logic here. But for me, I feel like just the syntax of this FCC tweet is
syntax
just so
very
Trump. I mean,
that's
it's
true.
Just like that one word. Like that's how you master the Trump tweet.
I like the way
one word exclamation.
Yes,
that's a Trump tweet.
Disgraceful at the end is very. I'm still sticking with my pick because I also feel like Russia's more like in the moment right now. But you're right, that disgraceful. That really does make me kind of doubt myself. But I'm still sticking with it. So you're going Sinclair broadcast merger tweet. I'm going very concerned about Russia tweet. And Matt?
You're both right. They're both real tweets.
Oh, wow.
And are they both from tonight?
They're both from tonight.
That's awesome.
Well, you know what, guys? I just want to say, like, I actually really like and care for and respect you both immensely. And, if tonight's it's been a cool ride. I love my family. I appreciate all the patrons. I mean, those are definitely like... And wait, did the Sinclair one come second? Because I feel like he revs himself up like a child.
It looks like... Oh, let's see. What are those dates?
Oh yeah, it did because the Russia one's in the morning.
Yeah, my dates are messed up because I had to use a different browser.
Oh,
So.
I always feel like the Twitter times are a little off too. Maybe some people know more about that than me.
But I feel like the Russia one, like I went with because just purely because of that move. That like, no, you're the one.
It is a good Trump
But
move.
the Sinclair one is definitely the one where it's like, I feel like he's just watched something on CNN he really doesn't like. And now it's like, and now the thing with Sinclair, just totally unfair.
Yeah, so
He's getting cranky.
The Russia one was 10 hours ago, and the Sinclair one was 2 hours ago.
Exactly. That would be right. That's because he does. That is very childlike. Like the Russia one's like, let me fire this off, then I'm gonna get a burger. And then the Sinclair one is like, Don Lemon is so unfair. We need Sinclair.
I think he knows a lot of people are pissed that Sinclair didn't get what they wanted out of that.
Right.
And he's got to like cover for it somehow.
I think that's actually, you know what, that's not a bad point. All right, let's do a piece of sound. Let's do this China Belt and Road Initiative. Basically, and I just want to give a flavor of this. We're going to be doing more China coverage. But I think the kind of angle of this sort of multi-colonial competition in Africa is significant. And also the fact that Africa has been a site of this kind of neo-mercantile Chinese approach, which in some ways I could see is very appealing because, as I've said so many times before, it eliminates the bullshit. But I also do want to give people a sense of the real scale of these agreements. There's long-term implications for the global economy and also the ecology of the continent. This is an Al Jazeera report that's going to frame it of President Xi's recent visit to the continent and the Belt and Road Initiative.
Chinese President Xi Jinping is on a four-nation tour of Africa with stops in Senegal, Rwanda, South Africa and Mauritius. The visit to Senegal was Xi's first trip to West Africa as leader. At a joint news conference with Senegalese President Macky Sall, he said Africa was China's natural ally and announced several new deals.
We have attended the signature of a slew of cooperation agreements in various domains, ranging from justice, economic and technical cooperation, infrastructures, promotion of human capital and civil aviation. The development of China will bring more opportunities to Africa, and the development of Africa will bring a new energy to the development of China.
Well, China is Africa's biggest trading partner. According to the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, trade between the two sides accounted for nearly $170 billion last year. Chinese exports to Africa reached $94.7 billion, while African countries imported $75 billion worth of Chinese goods. Beijing has several large-scale projects across the continent as part of its so-called Belt and Road Initiative, which aims to provide a link to 70 countries across Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and Africa. The Chinese government has also provided at least $86 billion in loans over a decade to finance over 3,000 projects in Africa. That includes a highway linking Senegal's capital, Dakar, to its second main city, Touba, and Ethiopia's $475 million light railway system in Addis Ababa, of which 85% was funded by China.
There was a book that came out in 2007, I believe. It was called Second World by a guy named Parag Khanna. Parag's a very nice guy and was helpful to me, actually, when I was kind of getting my feet out of college. We have very different politics, but the argument at the time was that there's three models of globalizing. There's the U.S. Laissez-faire, deregulate, corporate-friendly, and then have the kind of vestiges of democracy model. Then there's an EU model, which has been detonated through austerity and the rules of the euro currency, and obviously what the center has done to countries like Greece and Spain to some extent in terms of implementing austerity and hurting labor. But at the time, the argument was that the European Union was the global model that was essentially like exporting models of social democracy, because the EU did implement better labor rules, open borders, and had some social safety net. And then China, this kind of like China rise narrative, which was just starting to emerge at the time, was just the promise of efficiency, fast delivery, and non-hypocrisy. And that has actually really continued. And so when you look at the Chinese approach to Africa, there's now a lot more objections from African activists in terms of ecological issues, in terms of labor issues, in terms of support for tyrannical governments. But at the same time, the flip of the cut of that red tape in this very sped up process is that much more significant infrastructure. And now with the EU still sort of playing some, people like France still play very paternalistic and old line racist games in Africa. Macron has been incredibly unimpressive in this regard, just as he's been domestically, and the United States kind of contradictory moves. China's still there in a very significant way, and it's something that we're going to cover more and watch more. You're calling from a 518 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? We're going to race through these calls, and then we got to wrap up.
Hey, Michael, can you hear me?
Dave from Jamaica. I can always hear you.
Oh, cool. All right, then, since we're speeding it up, guys, we've been getting a lot of depressing stories and stuff, so I'll try to avoid some of that.
Okay.
I'll jump right into it. So let's say Democratic primary is happening, and I figure you're going to have a lot of candidates. So the neo-libs will be most of them, and they will eat up each other's food. So Bernie slips in and wins the primary.
In 2020,
and they're in a debate.
About.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Bernie wins the primary, and he goes through. And there's a foreign policy debate. What are the answers you would like to see to the foreign policy questions to get the more squishy voters who don't really, they kind of have the status quo in their brains when it comes to, well, we need borders, that type of stuff. How do you get those type of guys?
Well, borders is a specific. Borders is a specific. Actually, Matt, did you have something you wanted to jump in there?
Well, I was going to question how much people really vote based on foreign policy.
I don't think. Well, that's kind of what I was going to say. I don't think people vote. I think that first, people don't vote on foreign policy very much at all, and secondly, two things. I think one, you might be surprised at how relatively receptive more people are to. And I agree. Don't worry about that. Being anti-imperial is more important than being anti-interventionist. Is a more full critique. But that being said, it's a better default position than being interventionist. And I think there's a lot of receptivity to that. And I do think that's actually arguably an area where there's more empirical evidence that people bought Trump's lies about that than the economic stuff. So I don't think that there's a big appetite for interventionism at all. As far as the border stuff goes, I think it's really simple. People who are freaked out about the border, people that whatever that percentage is that still supports ICE, they're not going to vote for a Democrat. No matter how conservative or liberal, they're gone. The job is you beat them. That's where Sam's right. That's where it's a zero-sum game. That's where those people need to be crushed and destroyed politically. On the other hand, as I say, do I ultimately want to get rid of borders? Yes. That's my political project in the long term. In the short term, it's very easy to say we're still going to have borders, but they're going to be demilitarized, and we're not going to kidnap children, and we're not going to, and we're going to once again return to being in accordance with international law on refugees and all these other things. And if you want that, then you support me. If you oppose that, if you're voting on kidnapping children, go fuck yourself. You're not my candidate. I'm not your candidate. Goodbye.
All right. More question to you guys personally, since I'm being super hopeful. Let's say we get more left, get some serious power in the world, right? How do we deal with like bad actors? Let's say kind of like a Russia that meddles, because they're basically super capitalists now. What would be a smart way to deal with them? Because as you were talking earlier in the show, how economic sanctions is really violence against the populace. But in other words, how do you deal with bad foreign actors from a leftist perspective?
I think I'd personally just say you mainly go after the capital interests behind those, because I don't think it's necessarily nationalist. I think the Russian government, to the extent it hacked us for a specific oligarchic class, and you basically attack their power. And I think generally, if with regards to Russia attacking us, if we did things like paper ballots and expanded education and got rid of media concentration and monopoly and a lot of different things, we wouldn't have anything to worry about from Vladimir Putin.
We had national automatic voting, all of the things Matt mentioned, and our foreign policy play was guess what? The next wave of Paradise and Panama Papers we're publishing as the United States government.
As the IRS.
Yeah, as the IRS. There you go. David, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I mean...
No, let David respond. Let David respond. Oh, sorry. Sorry, David. My bad. No, I know, but that's Dave from Jamaica.
Sorry.
David Griscom.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is also regarding Russia and election interference. I mean, there's also been a international culture over the past few years of sort of messing around, especially using through the internet and using like computer technology to mess around with other countries, including election meddling and things like that. So basically, there's been a non-norm set in a kind of competition between like global powers, and I just feel like this most recent attack in the U.S. is definitely an interesting case, and it's important that we don't conflate everything together when we talk about Russia interference in the election, right? So it's like there's like attacks on voting machines, right, which that has like very specific danger to our democracy.
Or if they hacked
then there's
Clinton's info and changed their internal voter information for their voter models. That's a big deal.
And that would definitely, and then and then there's also the claims of Russian bots on Twitter and Facebook. And
well,
these
that
are
stuff gets more silly.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So we don't conflate these things, because it's very important that we're talking about these quickly. Look, the United States defense budget is absolutely huge, and at a certain point, if like we're leaving such things so vulnerable, I mean that's something that we really need to reform internally. To be able to defend against those kinds of attacks, because I don't think it's that outlandish.
And also, I would say too, and I've said this before, but yes, a real left internationalist government, even with social democratic variety, would say, okay, as hypocritical and as flawed and as made up as law is, there was a period of time where in some ways, in limited successful ways, very limited, but still with some actual success, we had some architecture of international norms, which have been destroyed by things like the Bush administration's torture regime. You would say, let's get back in accordance with those things, like we're going to follow Geneva, we're not going to torture people, as an example. And then you would say, all of the major stakeholders have to meet and determine what the rules of the road are for computer hack, cybersecurity, for drones. I mean, there's a whole other set of essentially warfare and national security questions, which have both not been in any way brought into real oversight in the United States, let alone there are no international norms established around. So I think that's the kind of forward-looking, strategic, humanitarian left perspective as well. Thanks, brother. I'll talk to you next week, hopefully.
Later, man.
Later. Thank you. You're calling from a 617 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Oh, hello. Is that me? Hello.
Mm-hmm.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Yes, you're on.
Yeah, I want to talk a little more about the Quebec latest call about what happens on university and campus. So I just want to explain what the reason here. I think the real reason is that there is no solidarity in a meritocracy system. Everyone just cares for himself.
Right.
And every time I look at it, I know the conservatives, they're stupid, but every time I look at them, I tell myself, at least they know that their professor is not your friend. Your professor is not your friend. And my personal experience on the university campus is something like this. It's a very, very corporate place.
Right.
It's like a corporation, and the professor is like your boss. I mean, high school is like a jail, right?
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that and that's kind of what we've been speaking to, which is that it's that type of real understanding of solidarity, and which by definition transcends identities and those types of bounds, and really does establish some genuine shared commonalities across a broad swath of experiences, is essential. And I think, yes, that's a real thing. I appreciate the call. You're calling from 310 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
What's up, guys? It's Adam in L.A.
Hey, Adam. What's going on?
Nothing much, but hey, did you guys see that Trump tape, the lawyer, Michael Cohen and him? I guess like some of the tapes got leaked to see.
What?
In the media rounds right now.
No, I didn't.
Yeah,
I missed what you said.
We'll get to this on MR tomorrow.
Yeah, what is it? The tape got leaked?
There's a tape, I think one of the Trump Cohen tapes is leaked, and it's basically like
nice.
Trump. It's like more incriminating than the smoking gun, or almost as incriminating as the smoking gun Nixon tape, because there's a point, I guess, where Trump's like, "Oh, can we just pay him?" And Cohen's like, "No," and it's basically like he's not saying no as if we can't pay him, but mainly like, don't say that over this phone line.
Right. No, but I'm saying, can we pay them? No. No, you're not hearing me. I want to pay them.
Pretty epic.
Oh, that's amazing.
But the thing that kind of annoyed me, because I was just going, looking through the Twitter commentary, is what the fuck's up with WikiLeaks, man? I mean,
right.
I know I was kind of doubted them, and that they're coming at this like this is an abuse of a lawyer recording a client.
Let me just give you really quick wrap on WikiLeaks. All right, there's 3 different parts. Not to cut you off, but I just think it's really simple.
No, of course.
I think that, look, anybody, whether it's the Democratic Party or any part of the commentariat that would ever promote, even now, putting any type of criminal charges against WikiLeaks related to any journalistic activities or disclosures of documents, that is wrong, it's stupid, and it's a huge threat to the free press. Period, full stop, no exceptions.
It's wrong because we care about the press, not because of Assange.
Well, that's the second part. It's wrong because we care about the press, not because. Number 2, look, WikiLeaks did some really great work, certainly back in, like 2011, 2010, disclosing civilian killings in Afghanistan and Iraq. They helped, expose everything from, corruption in Kenya to Scientology. That's great. The way they functioned in the last several years, and look, maybe I'm even willing, because I have a certain cynicism in some ways. Maybe Assange thought the best play for me to get out of the situation I'm in is to make nice with Trump or whatever. But I don't care. They obviously had questionable conversations with people in the Trump orbit. We know that. It's been disclosed. They clearly played a biased role in the election, and Assange is an asshole. So, all 3 of those things are true. And by the way, if he gets sent to the United States, or as I keep reiterating, anything that involves his journalism, I'll be out on the streets for him, even though he's an asshole. But if they reopen an investigation into Sweden, and I want to be really clear, I think this is going to be, and this will be much more my stance in general with a lot, I don't have an opinion on that. I don't know whether he is guilty or innocent of that at all. What I do know is that, he was wanted there, and there were a lot of other things floating around. Officials were threatening his life. That's true. But there also was the reality that all that was on the public record was that he was wanted for questioning in a sexual assault case in Sweden, and he went and created this whole drama in London. And he might have been right to do it. He might have been wrong to do it. But if there's charges related to a sexual assault, then that can play out in its own terms, and people can think of it whatever way they want. And, but that's, the journalism matters. Assange is a piece of shit. I think it's as simple as it gets.
And just to address the bias, because it did seem like he was biased towards the fascist side in the last election. Definitely. But even by their mission, we wouldn't accept this just play at both sides. We want transparency for everybody mission from the press, right?
That's right.
It's a false objectivity that WikiLeaks purported to, and it turned out being burned in the way that seemed helpful to fascists, like the same objective journalism tropes that in the media help them out.
Exactly. No, there was actually, that's exactly right. It was a radical, punk rock version of both sides do it. And also, again, the Ecuador angle is totally different. There's no doubt that Rafael Correa's offer to Julian Assange reflected a broader resistance that his government was attempting, which mostly was right. And Lenin Moreno is totally capitulated to oligarchs, is totally harmful from a social movement and socialism perspective in Ecuador. And his reasons of, if he does give Assange up, are probably incredibly negative. That's also the truth. So we can hold all of these things at once, and we don't need to in any way defend or justify Assange, but we can also recognize all of these bigger pictures.
The other thing, and maybe somebody can correct me on this, because I've said this a couple times and nobody's really clarified, but I've always been of this position that Assange should have turned himself into Swedish authorities, gone and answered those questions. And if it turned out that U.S. or somehow would get their hands on him and take them away from Swedish custody, it would have been in violation of Swedish human rights law.
That is
which
true.
says you can't extradite people to
a place that could do the death penalty.
And I think, look, it's hard to say somebody should put themselves at risk for going to prison, but he already did that when he went on this civil disobedience route. And I thought that would have been a good way to prove just how corrupt. Like, I would like to know Sweden would play ball like that. That would have been a useful thing to know.
Absolutely.
So I guess that's always been my sort of nagging distrust of the guy.
Does that make sense?
Little shady, but I mean, he does good work. So,
dude, I would say here's how I put it: a lot shady, has done good work, and if anything, anything involves a criminal case connected to his journalism or disclosures, it's a fundamental threat to all of us. Those are the three truths.
For sure, man. Thank you so much. And Matt, I just got a wind of your Stoner Cliffs Note show. It's pretty dope.
Oh, thanks.
Everybody, check it out. Literary Hangover. Thanks, brother. All right, final call of the night. You're calling from a 330 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael. I'll make it quick. It's Ryan from Ohio.
Hey, Ryan. What's going on?
Hey, I wanted to talk about the book that you're writing about the intellectual dark web.
Yes.
Okay, are you doing a chapter on Dave Rubin?
I don't think Dave Rubin can warrant a full chapter.
Not going to make the cut, sorry.
There's just simply not enough to write about. Like, he will get many demeaning references, but the part of the book that actually is trying to seriously contend with some of this stuff, and I'll talk more about it as it progresses, it's Rubin's not of that caliber. He's just a dummy who got on a trend.
Hear me out, though. Okay, a chapter about Dave Rubin, titled Dave Rubin. The name of the chapter is just Dave Rubin, and the whole chapter is just a transcript of his crowd work.
I will definitely figure out how to make fun of his crowd work in the book. That I can promise you.
It's for the preface.
That is for the preface. If I really indulged myself that way, I would open the book with any gay people reading this book, any woman reading this book, any Mormons reading this.
I'm looking forward to reading it.
All right, thanks, brother. Talk to you soon. Appreciate it. All right, we're gonna read one IM that came through. Bad Lobster Matt just went super hard. Cross the line off of my bucket list. I've officially seen and heard everything. I can die happy. Thanks, fellas. All right, guys. Thursday or Friday, brand new Woke Bros. Catch up on it. This Sunday, Zach Carter, who's a really good reporter for Huffington Post, we're doing illicit history of trade policy and the Clinton neoliberal paradigm, the Obama paradigm, and the harms of that, and the specific ways in which Trump's approach is essentially criminal. All that, much, much more. We're back next Tuesday. Thanks, everybody.